Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/MaliciousCompliance, where you'll hear super satisfying stories where people get exactly what they deserve. And in this episode, a Karen neighbor reports OP for devaluing her house, because OP's house is too darn ugly and it backfires. Guys, I hope you enjoy the lineup today. Hit subscribe if you haven't, and as always, you can send or link your stories to this email right here. So I drive for Uber in the Dallas area, and on this day, I received a ride request. So I pick up the gentleman, and it was a good ride. About 5 minutes in, the rider asked me what's on my rearview mirror. I tell him it's my interior camera, and at that, he gets mad and tells me to turn it off because he doesn't like such surveillance. I reminded him that the Uber app would have said there was video recording. There's also signs on the door, and he could have denied booking the trip if there was a problem. It escalated when he yelled, "Hey, you'd better turn that damn thing off, or else." "Or else?" I asked, and "yes" was the reply. The guy tells me to turn it off or to stop the trip. I verified with him his request, and he said, "Yes, turn the damn thing off or end the trip." To which I said, "Fine, have it your way, I'll comply." At that, I exit the highway and pulled into a convenience store. He acted a bit stunned before shouting at me and said, "What the hell are you doing?" To which I calmly stated, "You said either I stop recording or I end the trip. As I have no intention of stopping the recording, I'm letting you out right here." Now that did not go well for him, as he starts screaming and hurling abuse at me, questioning my parentage, and although correctly guessing my sexual orientation, was rather rude about it. I calmly ended the trip as per his request. That was the compliance. Now here is the maliciousness. So while ending the trip on the app, I gave him a 1-star rating, as we can't give a 0. And as he was really getting on my last nerve, I added feeling unsafe and abusive rider. As he continued to rant, I point to a police car that just pulled in and told him, "If you don't leave my car immediately, then perhaps you might want to explain why not to that nice officer." After getting a few more cutting jabs and getting out, the guy tossed his open protein drink at my head, hitting the headrest and spilling all over the floorboard. It was at that time I get a text message from Uber support asking if I was alright. I said I was, and they told me his account was immediately suspended and asked if I could send the video clip to him. I said I would, and also mentioned the mess. Uber support told me to just send them a picture and he'll be charged a $75 cleaning fee, which I got within the hour. So I did exactly what the rider wanted, but due to his petulant behavior, he got a cancelled Uber account, and it cost him $75. If he would have just left, I wouldn't have done a damn thing, but play stupid games and you win stupid prizes. Yeah guys, I think I would have gotten the officer at that point and tried to get him charged for that protein bottle to the head. Just to add insult to injury, as OP did have the footage of that. This is why people have cameras in their cars, sir, because idiots like you get into their cars. Now, I'm still unsure if this is really compliance, but my ex-employer announced some news regarding our jobs. It was obviously false, but instead of calling the BS, I treated it exactly as I would have if it was true, and it bounced back in their face. It was a while ago, when I was working in a community-based organization. We provided end-of-the-line shelter for people and did rights advocacy in a medium town of about 100,000 people. The salary was low but okay, but most employees were there because they believed in what we did. The main problem, though, was the manager. She didn't act accordingly to the set of values the organization was based on, took everything personal, made sure we were cut from the administrators, and created an atmosphere where people feared retribution. Now, we were unionized, but after a few months, I realized that no one was ever filing complaints, because they feared that she was going to lash back at them. It turns out she had done it to a few people in the past, and people just wanted to avoid her. Once I figured that I wasn't going to stay there much longer, I decided to sign all the complaints I could, and figured I would see them to the end and then leave. That way, the administrators couldn't claim not knowing, and there was a good chance my colleagues would have a better work environment. So of course, the next few months were a living hell. She picked on me regularly. Still, most people sided with me, at least privately, as most of them feared that she would do the same treatment to them if they declared it publicly. One morning, little Miss Karen calls a staff meeting and explains that a large amount of complaints have been filed in the last few months. She looks directly at me while saying this, and says that the cost to settle them or to pay the lawyers to fight them might bankrupt the organization, and everyone's at risk of losing their job soon. Insert the ominous music. So at that point, panic ensues. My colleagues are crying, they're calling their significant others, and a lot of people are begging me to take the complaints back, stating that she got the lesson, and some of them are genuinely pissed at me. In my opinion, it was obviously a load of crap made to turn them against me. I mean, there's no way a sole emergency housing of a 100,000 person city would be closing for a dozen complaints. On top of that, I'm not even asking for money, in any form, over legal fees, which are usually budgeted in advance. Come on, it's basic fear-brewing schemes. Now, normally I would have questioned it during the meeting, or tried to reason with them afterwards. But that time, I decided to comply with the narrative and treat it as if it were true. I then left for my break and did what I would have done if we were really closing, which was appealing to the public outrage to help us fulfill our mission. So I called the news. I told them verbatim the morning announcement, the service hole it would create in the community, the job impact it would have in the city, etc., etc. The local news picked it up. They called the manager and administrators about running the story, questioning how come there were enough complaints to threaten a 35-year-old pillar of the community services, asking what the complaints were about, etc. Before 4 p.m. the same day, my boss calls another meeting to explain that we must have misunderstood the first meeting, as the organization was in no way, shape, or form in danger of closing, and everybody still had a job. Sure, we must have misunderstood. Toby did come back to say that the boss did quit 6 months later after 15 years of being there. So yeah, maybe she did dig her own grave by calling that staff meeting and fabricating that wild lie. So here's a little background. More than 10 years ago, I made the mistake of booking a connecting flight on American Airlines. I was traveling alone with 2 toddlers, so I booked 3 seats next to one another. As we check into the first flight, they gave me the 6 boarding passes, and I'm upset to see that we're spread out over the whole section for the second flight. All middle seats, of course. It's a different airline, so they claim they can't change it. So the first thing during layover, I go to the counter. The person tells me, "Oh, we can't do anything. They'll fix this at the gate." So I rush over to the gate, and they say, "Sorry, there's nothing we can do. The stewardess will take care of you." Of course, I made it a point to be at the front of the line, all the while trying to entertain cranky kids who want to ride the train some more. The gate person knew the issue, but announces that families with young kids are no longer seated early and will not make a difference for me. Eventually we board, and one of our 3 rows still has 2 seats open. So I drop the kids and go find the stewardess, and the stewardess says, "Oh, there's nothing I can do. You'll have to ask them to move yourself." The lady who's standing there waiting for her seat grumbles, but she takes one of my boarding passes. The gentleman, however, will not move, no matter how much I plead. So cue the malicious compliance. Out of nowhere, I thanked him for allowing me to relax, and at that, he makes a confused face. I then opened our onboard backpack and started to point things out, saying, "This is the portable DVD player. That should keep the older one entertained for a while. And here's the books to read to the younger one. These are the snacks. Make sure you feed them on the way up, otherwise their ears will hurt. You can get me for the bathroom run and the diaper changes though." As I got ready to thank him again for volunteering for childcare, the man gave up and took the other seat. I had no idea what I would have done if he had stuck it out. I wasn't gonna have my toddler sit with a stranger where I can't see what's going on. Okay, so a lot of people are steaming at OP for this post, guys, saying that she's an entitled parent who harassed someone for something beyond his control, and then she had the audacity to feel smug about it. I do wonder what would have happened though if the man refused to swap seats. How many of you wouldn't have done it? Okay, so I'm not sure if this is malicious compliance or just unintended consequences, but I feel like it belongs here. So back in my mid-20s, I used to wait tables at this restaurant in my hometown. The money was good, and I got along well with everyone there. So usually after the shift, a few of the servers would sit at the bar and have a few drinks to wind down. You figure, why go to another bar when there's a bar right here? We always tipped well and nothing was ever an issue. Until one day when the owner out of nowhere decided that employees were not allowed to drink at the bar anymore. Now, I completely understand that this is a normal rule in other bars, and the owner was well within his rights, but I just didn't see where this was coming from. I then asked the manager if we did anything wrong to warrant the rule change. He said the owner was just being a dick. He told me he tried to talk him out of it because there was no reason, but the owner just wanted to make his presence known, which is okay. He's within his rights too. However, what the guy didn't count on was Thursday nights and my friends. You see, back then, my friends were in a punk band and they had practice every Thursday night. I would work every Thursday night, and they would meet with me at the bar and grab a drink with me after my shift. And usually, they would bring their girlfriends, their friends, and whoever was hanging around. My friends pretty much made the bar's Thursday nights as busy as a Friday or a Saturday evening. And when I tell you we could drink, oh boy, we could drink. And of course, everybody tipped generously. So when I told them that I wasn't allowed to drink at the bar anymore after my shift, they were just as pissed as I was. My buddy Bob was like, wait, so there's no point to go to your bar and then for all of us to go to another bar after you're done so you can join us. We might as well just go to another bar and you can just meet up with us after. That was the most logical solution. There was another bar just around the corner. So come Thursday around 9 p.m., I'm finishing up my shift and my manager approaches me. The guy looks at the empty bar and says, hey man, are your friends on the way? They're usually like 3 drinks in by now. To which I reply, oh, they're actually usually 4 drinks in, but they're at the bar around the corner. My manager's dumbfounded and he says, wait, what? Why aren't they drinking here? I calmly tell him, well, they just want to drink with me and I'm not allowed to drink here. Now if you'll excuse me, there's a pint of beer waiting for me around the corner. And that's when I walked out and joined my friends for a fun night. Now I will admit that I do feel bad for the bartender who usually worked Thursday nights. She had no part in the decision and her tips suffered because of our move, but that's on management, not me. So a few weeks later, the owner did notice a dip in sales on Thursday nights, and he comes up to me and said that we're allowed to drink here again. However, the damage was done. We found out that not only did the bar around the corner have all the beers we usually drink, but they were much cheaper. We also struck up a great friendship with the bartenders. We found our new hangout spot, and there was no reason to go back. Oh well. Guys, I don't know why, but that owner did kind of upset me. OP, you're not allowed to drink here, but continue to bring your friends, okay? Because we need their money. Like, what an a-hole, right? I'm glad to know that OP was the sole reason his Thursday nights were so busy, and that makes me smile. In 2008, I was involved in a federal lawsuit when my rural Texas high school tried to suspend me for wearing a shirt supporting then Democratic hopeful John Edwards. Hindsight is 2020. They said it was a violation of the dress code, which was only ever selectively enforced. My parents had my back though, and to quote my very white dad, it was redneck cracker nonsense. I'll never forget during the initial meeting when my principal called in a school board member. He said if I got suspended, I would probably get kicked off the football team, and that could hurt me getting into college. Now that didn't matter, I was a miserable player and a smart kid, so it wasn't gonna be what took me to college. But the slimy fake concern as he tried to leverage my future against my speech is something I'll never forget. Anyways, as the case goes on, the squeeze gets tighter. First, they have the football coaches try to get me to drop it. Having the football coaches talk about how my selfishness means that they can't wear Fellowship of Christian athlete shirts anymore, trying to embarrass me in front of the team. Now I'm a kid who openly plays Magic the Gathering in high school. Hit me with your best shot, I have no shame. Next, they host a meeting with all the teachers, telling them that I'm a problem, and they need to keep an eye on me just in case I slip up. I found this out years later after the fact, when I bumped into my teacher at a friend's wedding. Finally, they just start pulling in students from my classes to get them to say bad stuff about me. I was a class clown, so this turns into every single dirty joke, rude comment, or loud fart I've ever made getting reported to the school administration. Which leads to this awful little toady vice principal calling me and my parents in and reading them back in front of my mother. That one did sting. My parents still knew it was BS, but who wants their locker room jokes aired in front of their mom? They used this as a pretext to expel me for 6 weeks, citing inappropriate sexual conduct. They shoved me into the disciplinary alternative educational program, and I'm effing steaming. The program's basically where they warehouse kids with emotional problems that they can't handle. And you just sit in a room in a refurbished insane asylum, and you can't do anything but read or use the computer for monitored educational purposes. You also get booted from extracurriculars while you're in there. I know at this point they wanted me to make a scene so they can punish me further, so I do the exact opposite. I channel all my rage and my new free time into my schoolwork, doing homework that I would usually ignore because I knew I could ace the test. Now I'm doing both, and my GPA is climbing. I start looking into scholarships and find a bunch that are really interested in political activism, and guess who now knows a little bit about that? I apply and rip my school a new a-hole in every one. Then I work with my dad and we find an attorney who will take our case pro bono, which means while the school bleeds fees, it doesn't cost us anything to keep it in court. I spend those weeks like a monk, motivated entirely by spite, doing everything I could to make their BS work for me. I got out, got back on all my teams, and ended up applying for a prestigious honors program at my dream school. Not only did I get in, but I got way more financial support than I thought I would. Eventually we lost the case, but the school had to abolish the dress code anyway because they couldn't afford to get sued again. I don't like the idea that a school lost money, but man, they made the choice. They could have backed down whenever. Now I've graduated law school and I'm taking the bar in 2 weeks, and already have a job investigating government corruption. I'm getting paid to be a pain in the ass of petty authority, and that's pretty sweet. Honestly guys, I feel like OP did win. He fought against the school to the point where they ended up abolishing the dress code in fear of getting sued over it again. And this person says, that's not a loss. When you stick to the case until the other side can't afford to not do what you wanted them to do, that's a win. Not 100% win because you didn't get money for yourself, but a win nonetheless. So this is a story of my mother's. She's always been incredibly hard-headed, but this one sticks out a lot from my teenage years. So once a year, my mom always had us pull everything out of the garage. There were lots of boxes, and my mom has a concerning amount of possessions, and she would make us go through it, clean it, and reorganize. On this particular year, the couple who owned the house across from us were in the process of selling their house. Unhappy with my mother's unsightly, ugly driveway covered in boxes that were soiling their good image, they make a call to the HOA complaining that our ugly home was ruining their home value. By the time my mom receives the letter, the mess had been put away, but they decided to get her on a few other complaints, such as the bikes up against the side of the house and the patchy gravel. She had 2 weeks to have everything up to standards. Petty and easily frustrated, my mom knew immediately who called, since the couple had come over and told her flat out that with their renovations, they were selling that house for way more than any other house on this neighborhood, and they would appreciate it if she respected that by keeping her ugly ass property on par. So for the next 2 weeks, every box from that garage was in our driveway. The couch and the living room TV came outside next. Now this was early summer, so it was perfect weather to sit in your yard in your short shorts and your sports bra. And my mom made sure to wave, shout, and smile every time they brought someone over for a showing. The final step came at the end of the 2 weeks though. After the yard had been cleaned up and cleared by the HOA, my mom goes to the local Walmart and she bought a for sale sign. She then wrote about a quarter of their ridiculous asking price on it, and she finished off with a big sold written across the front, and then she sticks it in our front yard. Now no clue what they ended up selling their house for, but it sat empty for a while, so I assume it was way below offer. Guys, holy crap, OP's mom is so ridiculously petty and I absolutely love it. This is why you never mess with others. You never know to what extent they'll go to make your life difficult. And in this case, I hope the couple lost a lot of money on that house. This story is from my teenage years. Once upon a time, I owned a 1988 Isuzu Trooper. I loved that vehicle, and I put it through hell, and it put up with that for a very long time. But a trip through Death Valley was the final straw, and it blew a head gasket. I love this vehicle, so I wanted to keep it, so I tow it to my grandfather's house as he has an amazing garage. This man has taught me an amazing amount. He was also in the pump field, and a master machinist. He was also a Navy boxing champion. The guy stands at 5'6", with bushy white hair and a beard, built like a brick house, with a bottom line that you don't want to cross. I love my grandpa, but don't make him mad. Anyway, I get to his garage and tell him what happened. We order a replacement cylinder head, gaskets, bolts, and I go to start taking it apart when he stops me. My grandfather says, "So where's it blown?" And I say, what? He then asks me which cylinder is leaking. To which I say, I don't know, I was just gonna pull the head. My grandfather says, no, first we'll run a scope into the engine to see if it's worth saving, but I need to locate the blow. Pull the spark plugs. So I do. A few minutes later, all the spark plugs are pulled, but even with a flashlight, we can't see well enough. My grandfather then looks at me and says, "Turn it over." I tell him, "Grandpa, I don't know if that's a good idea." He then cuts me off and says, "I said turn it over." "But Grandpa, it might..." He then cuts me off again and says, "Boy, I said turn it over right now." To which I say okay. My grandfather leans in close to the engine over the fender with his flashlight, and I hop in and hit the starter. My grandfather is then greeted with a face full of oil and coolant blasting out of the number 3 cylinder. He stands up, with his face, hair, and beard all covered and dripping in a wonderful brown and green sludgy mixture. Slowly he pulls a rag out of his pocket and he wipes his eyes and face, and I'm trying to keep a straight face. My grandfather turns to face me and he looks me directly in my eyes and he says, "I'd better not hear an effing word out of you, boy." To which I say, "Yes, sir." Technically, laughing isn't really speaking, so I hope OP got a long chuckle out of that. And Grandpa sounds like an awesome guy. Everybody has their slip-ups once in a while, guys. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /malicious compliance. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's wonderful stories. If you did, hit that subscribe button. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, I'll link it right here. An entitled Karen gets mad, attacks police, and goes completely psycho when OP doesn't let her 13-year-old torment him. It's such a ridiculous story, so go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.